right, folks, welcome to another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Sileo, and the July calendar is packed. Boy, has everyone been galvanized by the World Cup. You got NBA news. NFL training camps are starting next week. You got Seattle, San Francisco. There are a boatload of teams. Arizona, Carolina. Storylines everywhere as the NFL comes right around the corner here. Also, Major League Baseball, the All-Star Game. Folks, we got it covered here for you, and without a doubt, let's get into it. Well, the Dodgers have decided to do something that a lot of teams have done for decades. They have decided to go to the White House in celebrating one of the greatest achievements in all of sports, a championship. Folks, this is what this is all about here. When did this become a thing? It became a thing when Donald Trump became the president of the United States. Listen, I've said this before, and Dave Roberts, the manager of the Dodgers, has said it as well. He's not a politician. He's a manager of a Major League Baseball team. And by the way, you have a right not to go. He's made it very clear to people on that baseball team if they don't want to go. And Kiki Hernandez has already said that he's not going to participate in the festivities at the White House. And Dave Roberts, the manager of the Dodgers, is correct. As I've said to you before, this is not about the guy who's in the White House. This is more about your team being revered and being honored. Dodgers returning to the White House to carry on championship tradition. Then you have idiots like the LA Times' Bill Plaschke. So Bill Plaschke's talking about how he and everyone is doing this when it comes to disrespecting your fan base. And I tweeted this out here at Bill Plaschke. You mean the same fans that the Dodgers and Walter O'Malley drove out of Chavez Ravine to build Dodger Stadium? You mean those fans? Those Mexican and Mexican Americans that were in Chavez Ravine? I think Bill doesn't like to give you a true history lesson here on who the Dodgers actually were when they moved from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. Remember, they displaced many Mexicans, many Mexican Americans from Chavez Ravine so they could give Walter O'Malley Dodger Stadium. That same stadium that people today roll into that Bill Plaschke says the Dodgers are disrespecting by going to the White House. Hey, Bill, just a lesson here. Why don't you give the full story of Dodger baseball and tell people how Dodger Stadium was built? And if it wasn't for a dude by the name of Fernando Valenzuela, nobody on the planet would be going to Dodger games that was Mexican or Mexican American. He galvanized everyone and brought him back into the building. That's your fan base. Those are the people that you serve when you go to Dodger Stadium. Again, let's not forget the greatness of Jackie Robinson and what the Dodgers were all about in the 1940s when he crossed the color line in 1947. Talking about history, you can't leave out half the history. You've got to tell the entire history. And going to the White House, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's Barack Obama, whether it's Bill Clinton, it doesn't really matter. It's about your team being revered and being honored. It is a tremendous honor to have your team there at the White House being honored by the nation. Remember something. This isn't Trump's house. This is America's house. And people who get honored when they roll into that building are revered forever. And by the way, the Dodgers are on the cusp of doing something no National League team has done in over 100 years. And that is three-peat. Last team to do this when it came to going back-to-back were the Cincinnati Reds' Big Red Machine in the 1970s. They're going to go and try and do something that we haven't seen since the 1920s, and that is three-peat. And the Dodgers are on the cusp of doing this now, and let's see them being revered, and I'm glad that Dave Roberts made it very clear. And I love Dave Roberts. I've known him for a long time when he was a bench coach for Bud Black when he was in San Diego on that bench with Bud there with the Padres. And I'm glad to see the Dodgers are there going to the White House. And again, if you don't want to go, I understand that as well. That's the cool thing about this visit. You're being revered and you get to make your own statement. If you don't want to go and you want to turn this into politics, have at it. But as Dave Roberts said, folks, the idea is to be invited every year because that means, guess what? You're celebrating a championship. Okay, so let's go over to the housewives of the National Football League. This is exactly what Tom Brady has dubbed wide receivers in the National Football League today. So he was on the New Heights podcast there with the Kelseys, and he made it very clear that the position in the National Football League now, the wide receiver position, is a position that you have to give more care, and you have to treat these players a little bit different, and more energy, as he put it, has to be put into coddling their egos. Well, this is a National Football League created now image of what the wide receiver in the NFL is today. Let me give you a little history lesson here. Back in Jerry Rice's day, nobody opened up their mouth because they were in fear of getting destroyed coming across the middle of the field. You didn't hear wide receivers chirping because if you did, you would get your ass knocked out. You would get your ass handed to you. Now the National Football League has made it so that this is a new position that people now are egomaniacs. If you go back in the day, in the 1990s, even back in the days of the Emmitt Smith, the running backs were the number 2 offensive player in most huddles in the National Football League. You go back to the 80s, it was even more so that you had the era of the running back. Running backs were really the second guy who was the most important person in the huddle next to your quarterback. Well, what did the NFL do? They changed that dynamic. Look at the kids coming out of college today. Most of them are wide receivers. Can you imagine what the NFL has done for that position? You could get the ball 5 times a game, and you can make in excess of $35 million, in some aspects, nearly $40 million a year, touching the ball only 5 times. Again, back in the day when you were a football team in the NFL in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, you're talking about being a workhorse guy like Emmitt Smith, getting the ball 28 to 35 times and carrying your football team on their backs. Wide receivers today, this is created by the National Football League. And Tom Brady even said it. You've got to go over and above to sit there and make sure that their egos are okay. Can you imagine that? Guys like A.J. Brown, who bitched and moaned. And Brady said, hey, you got to be cool with the fact that one game you may get the ball 12 touches, and then the next game you may get it 3 touches. That's not good enough for these guys today. It's almost made it to the point where wide receivers in the NFL today, think about it, they'd rather get their numbers and they would rather get their touches, I think more so than winning. Because this is how you're paid. You're not paid on wins in the National Football League. Take a look at the top flight wide receivers in the National Football League, and you tell me how many guys have gone on to win Super Bowls or even contended or been in Super Bowls. If you make your numbers in the NFL and you get your touches, that's how you're received and how you're looked at, whether or not you're one of the better wideouts in the National Football League. It's not about wins. It's about fantasy points. Remember, fantasy football. This has what really has changed the game and how you look at fans. Hey, what guy gives me the most when it comes to my fantasy team? What gives me the most opportunity to make as much money as I possibly can with my fantasy team? It's all about touches, and it's all about your receptions and yardage and your TDs. That's all these wide receivers in the NFL care about, and Brady knows that. And to be truthful, most quarterbacks know that these guys would rather get their numbers than would rather really win games. Look at A.J. Brown, man. A.J. Brown made $32 million a year, was 50-18 in 4 years, and that wasn't good enough for him, and that's why he's in New England. All right, our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the number one injury law firm in all of America for a reason. I tell you about the family in Pennsylvania, when it was initially offered $650K, they got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family that was in Florida, they got initially offered $350,000, they got $12 million in settlement. Go to forthepeople.com/Big Sills or Pound Law 529. That's forthepeople.com/Big Sills or Pound Law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sills sent you. Major League Baseball and the All-Star Game. No Shohei Ohtani, but I'll tell you what, a lot of storylines going around the All-Star Game in Pennsylvania. We're going to talk to George Kurtz next. We'll do that right here on SportsGrid. Man, I love talking baseball with George Kurtz. There's two guys I love talking baseball with, and that is my friend Bob Nightingale and George Kurtz here. And we got the All-Star game right around the corner here. And I'm going to start it right out of the gate here with the Dodgers. It's 3 years now, George. Major League Baseball is not like the NFL or any other sport. You're supposed to not be good for 3 straight years. And here we are. I'm looking at the date, July 12th. We're doing this again. Are the Dodgers the best team in all of Major League Baseball? George, I don't think fans really understand how incredible what we're talking about. We haven't seen a three-peat guy in National League in over 100 years. Are they still the best team in baseball?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I don't think they're a runaway, Dan. I don't think they're, oh, well, no one's beating the Dodgers. I mean, I know we're talking about World Series here, but the Yankees played terrible in 24, right? They pretty much say, here you go, win the World Series. The Blue Jays should have won last year. All right, and you'll never be able to convince me they shouldn't have won that World Series. Even take away everything else, just the last the Isaiah kind of Khalifa play at the plate. My God, don't slide, run through it. You beat it out here. All right, take a bigger lead. You beat it out here. All right, they pooped the bed. All right, really, they should have won that. That being said, I think the Dodgers are the best team right now. They certainly have the most depth. Right, they get all these injuries to their pitching staff. Snell's gone, Glass now is gone. Doesn't matter. All right, they just put the next All-Star in so they can survive all those guys. I'm wondering what they're going to do in 3 weeks at the trade deadline. We're hearing a lot of reports that they think they're so good that they're looking just to strengthen up their minor leagues, not even looking for a major league player. They're going to get Edwin Diaz back, right? So shore up that bullpen here. But I'm curious if they go after that big name, Tariq Skubal or someone like that. Middle infield, I think they could use some help at. But yeah, they're the best team. But listen, Milwaukee took a big shock. A big hit with Harrison going down, right? That injury, we don't know. If it's a month, no big deal. Remember the Yankees and Red Sox of the 90s? They would always tell their pitchers, go on the IL for a couple of weeks, take a break here. So no big deal if he's just going to be okay. But if that's a serious injury where he's not going to be Harrison, I think that probably does take them out of the running to beat the Dodgers here. But still, Mizorowski, I love Logan Henderson there. Woodruff was good when he was pitching, but he doesn't seem to be able to pitch more than 3 starts in a row here. Good team there, needs some power. And let's not count out the Phillies. You know, they're always there every year. It's the same team every year, but they can be a dangerous team as well here if they can make the right addition.
Let me go off script here a little bit, and let me ask you this about what's coming up with the work stoppage potentially and the CBA that owners and players are going to be talking about. How much of an impact do you think that would have on the Dodgers, if any, when it comes to their winning? If they were to have a salary cap, do you think that would slow them down a little bit? Remember, you and I have talked about Andrew Friedman and how great that general manager is. George, do you think that would be a situation where it would slow them down a little bit if they did have a cap?
Well, they would know more than us, right? From a GM, the owner would have a better idea if there's going to be a cap. I personally don't think there'll be a cap. I think there'll be a change in the system, but not a cap. I don't think the players are ever giving into that. So that's my feeling there. But I work with Craig Mish, and, you know, Craig's the announcer for the Marlins here, and he'll tell you he does think there's going to be some kind of cap. So he and I are on different sides here, and I would probably have to, side with him. He knows more. He's more of an insider than I am there. So we'll see. Do I think it'll stop the Dodgers? No, I don't. They're already. I mean, even if there's going to be a cap, let's just say the 275. Let's say it's 300 million here. The Dodgers would have to lop off 100 million. It would have to be grandfathered in, right? Someone I mean, I don't see how they're going to be able to do it in one off season here. So no, I don't think it'll stop them. I mentioned Tariq Skubal. He's a free agent anyway. So if they don't want to pay him because they can't, it's cap problems, they don't have to worry about that next year. Maybe it does stop some other teams from maybe making big, taking on contracts. I can see that happening. I don't think it stops the Dodgers, though. No, they're on a run. They've won 2 in a row. I think they'd like to make it 3. And if there's 100 games next year, I think they'd like to make it 4 and win that one too. I don't think they're going to let a possible cap stop them.
You mentioned Skubal here. The Tigers are 2.5 games out of the wild card race right now. It just shows you how bad the American League is in baseball. You know, they got out to a brutal start here, and there they are. They're still 2.5 out in the wild card. I mean, George, do the Tigers make that move and move him, or do they sit tight and get closer to August 3rd, the trading deadline, to see what's happening and what potentially shakes out?
Well, I think it's the first thing you do, right? You wait till you're not going to trade him now. All right, unless someone makes you an offer you just can't refuse, right? Then, okay, I got no choice. If the Dodgers are going to say, hey, you can take any 3 players in our farm system, well, then you're making that trade. All right. Now, it's 3 weeks, right? That's the deadline. You mentioned they're 2.5 out, but they're also behind Baltimore, Toronto, Boston, Houston, Minnesota, Seattle, Cleveland, and the Yankees. they've got to hop a lot of teams. You got to have that come to Jesus moment with yourself. You're not winning the World Series. All right, that's not happening. I don't care how bad the American League is. You're not winning the World Series. You cannot lose Skubal for nothing. And you're not going to resign him, right? He's going to get $300 million, $400 million, whatever it is with him and Boris there. You can't let him go and get zero back. That sets your organization back too far. So I think in some ways, I know this is going to sound weird, but if I'm the GM of the Tigers, I'm sort of hoping, can we be like 6-7 back at the deadline? Make it easier for me to deal with this guy where I'm not going to hear the blowback from the media, from the fans who now hate me. I think that's sort of what they're hoping here. They fall out of it a little bit. But if they're closer, if they're in a playoff spot, maybe they do hold on to him. But I think you're doing a disservice to your team for the future if you just lose him for nothing. I have no problem holding on to him if your owner's going, we're legitimately going to try and resign him during the offseason. But they've already said no, Dan. They've already said no. You can't let this guy hold you back.
Okay, my Yankee brother, let me hear it here. What will it mean for the Yankees to get Aaron Judge back in that lineup?
Oh, it's immense. We can see it. They can't hit without him. It's amazing how one guy, he's a great guy, the MVP and all that, but one guy just determines this whole lineup. They pitch around him. He's on base all the time because he walks a lot here, and he's also that big presence, right? We all feel better on the big guy. All right, big guys in the lineup, hockey, big guy, football, big guy. You feel better, you feel stronger, more of a team here. He's there every day. He's in the dugout, but it's not the same here. It'll be immense. Nothing has changed here. Everything we're hearing about the Yankees, they're going to do re-imaging this week. But even Brian Cashman said, we don't expect it to be clean. All right, we're just hoping he can do more. He's not doing any upper body work. Bottom, fine. Upper, no. So they're hoping he can do more work there. So we'll see, Dan, but everything's saying mid-August would be what they're hoping for. That's hoping for. I'm kind of thinking they'd be happy they get him back for the last month of the season here to go for that stretch run. I think he will be back, but I also wouldn't be shocked, Dan, if they say it's not coming out, it's not happening this season. Judge will be back next year.
30 seconds. How does Aaron Boone keep his gig?
Because he does what Cashman wants him to do. He's good with the media. He's good with the players. He's a terrible in-game manager. We know that. But he's the guy who takes all the shots for Cashman, right? He takes all the bullets from the media. Cashman doesn't have to hear it, and Cashman gets to control him. All right, gets to do what he wants. He's not going to argue about player management and stuff like that. So that's the situation there. But it's been going on for years. Yankee fans know this. It's not going to change. You heard Cashman say this week, no, he's doing a great job. We love him.
I never get that. I mean, God rest the boss, man. If he were alive right now, they'd be trying to bring Billy Martin back from the grave. That's what they'd be doing there. We're going to talk more with George Kurtz here. Alex Cora or Don Mattingly in Philly? We'll do that next here on SportsGrid. Baseball All-Star Game right around the corner in Philadelphia. Great place, 250th anniversary of America. What a better place to have the All-Star Game. And let's start there in Philadelphia. Don Mattingly, Alex Cora. If George Kurtz was going to put money down on who the manager in 2027 will be in Philadelphia, who do you have?
Well, right now, you got to think it's going to be Mattingly again. All right. I mean, he's turned this team around. Granted, he had, I always used to love, Dan, when managers call a team meeting right before the ace is going the next day against a terrible team. Let's call a team meeting right before Roger Clemens is going against, whatever, terrible team is going. Well, Mattingly got the job right before Zach Wheeler returned. All right. And Zach Wheeler seems to have turned everything around there, right? Sanchez, Wheeler, Luzardo. Luzardo's turned it around as well here. And they're hitting. All right. I mean, listen, the bottom last two spots in that rotation, Nola and whoever they're throwing at the fifth spot, is a problem. But those top three guys, yeah, they're going to win a lot of ball games here. So I think Mattingly did get in at the right time. Listen, it could also be that it's Don Mattingly. You're going to respect the guy, right? Should be a Hall of Famer, great player. He's been a good manager. Almost went to the World Series last year as a bench coach with Toronto. If I had to bet right now, it's Mattingly because of how well they're playing. If it keeps up, you're not going to get rid of him. I do think they're going to win that division. But that being said, Cora's there. Cora's out there. If he wants a job, he's getting a job. And I think it's in the National League East. If it's not with the Phillies, maybe it's a little further north with the Mets. Mm-hmm. Although A.J. Green's done a decent job, okay, but they're going to want a name there. If Cora wants to manage, it'll be in the I think it'll be the Mets or Phillies. Right now, I would say Mets.
How do you think the GM, Dave Dombrowski's done there in Philadelphia since he's run that organization for Middleton? Do you think that, he's been able to really keep them as a contender? I mean, we know what he did in Detroit. We know what he did, obviously, in Miami, also up in Boston, obviously. But how do you think he's handled the Phillies?
Well, he's done well. I wouldn't say he hasn't done great. They haven't won anything here. He's going to have some tough decisions to make. They're an older team. Schwarber, Harper, Turner, and Turner looks like he's already not the same guy here. So they're going to have some decisions to make in the future here about how you're going to replace these guys and move on. Sort of like with the Pittsburgh Penguins in hockey with Crosby, Lemieux, Letang, Malkin was the guy I was looking for there. They're an older team. What are you going to do? But they're in contention each and every year. He hasn't been able to, in my mind, to get the deadline move right. Right? They need an outfielder. They could use that. They're going to need a fourth or a fifth starter. All right, and that's going to be tough. Yeah, you handed out a bad contract to Nola, which we all knew it was bad as soon as you handed it out. But that happens. Most of them are going to do that. But if he can make the right move, I said before, I think it's the Dodgers, Phillies, and Brewers as the top three teams in the National League with Atlanta a little bit further behind. So if they can make the right move here, Dan, if they could add Skubal, my God, who's beating that team? Wheeler, Sanchez, Skubal? It'll cost you arm, leg, firstborn, but man, they would be, in my mind, then they would be the favorite of a team you'd have to beat there. But he needs to make that big move at the deadline.
Absolutely here. Speaking of the deadline here, do you think in the American League, we talked about it not being really some good baseball in the first half here. Do you think environment matters, George? And what I mean by that is if you're the Rays, a club that traditionally doesn't spend a lot of money because, again, they don't have a lot of money right now until they get their new ballpark here, would you be a buyer here knowing that right now you're sitting at 4 up in the American League East and nobody's running away with any division right now in the American League? Would you be a buyer if you were the Rays and go for it?
To whatever they can, yes, because the Yankees aren't going to be the Yankees, right? We've seen that Judge. You don't know if he's going to come back. Is he going to be Judge? Fried? Is he going to come back? Is he going to be Fried? Rodon? There's a lot of ifs there with the Yankees about what team they can be, and they generally don't play all that great in October anyway. Rays do play baseball. And we love the way they play, right? They're going to move runners over, steal bases, bump, all old school baseball there. Would they like a bopper? Absolutely. And I think that could help. Could they use another starting pitcher? Yeah, but I don't think it's necessary. I think they're one of those teams, I don't think they're going to be that big buyer right away at the deadline. They're going to see what's left at 3 o'clock when maybe the prices come down a little bit and what they can add from there. Maybe a Joe Ryan at Minnesota if no one wants to pay that price. He would look good at Tampa Bay. Because I talk about Skubal a lot. Joe Ryan's really good too. He's not Skubal, but he's really good. He can help a contender here. But I think the Rays, yeah, because Dan, you said it. We talked about this last week too. American League's terrible. There's no great team. All right. If you told me right now the Chicago White Sox were going to represent the American League in the World Series, Dan, I wouldn't be floored. I wouldn't be. Maybe it's Tampa. Maybe it's Seattle. I'm keep on Seattle. Now they can't win a ball game to save their lives. So yeah, I think Tampa has as good a chance as anybody and maybe the best chance out of anybody.
George, what do you make of this? Those 7 umpires that took those buyouts, 59 years and older, Do you know this will be the first time in baseball history you're not going to have any umpires in the game next year, 60 years or older? What's that trend? What do you think that means? Is this a thing because of ABS? I mean, is this where we're going here? We're going to go with younger guys behind the dish and out there in the field?
So I don't know what the buyout was. You know, how much was that? That much money where they couldn't say no? I am somebody who follows the ABS and the numbers there. Umpire Order, that website is great. They can tell you what umpires. I can tell you most of those umpires not so good, Dan. So maybe ABS did have something to do with it. But hey, you're going to go offer me $1 gazillion to leave. Maybe I would leave too.
Absolutely. George, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. We're going to kick the ball to soccer. Michelle Kaufman, World Cup, next here on Sports Grid. Tell you what, World Cup has really brought some drama to America, and I love to see all the stands that are filled. And I was watching the Norway English game yesterday, and hey, fans and people were sweating their baguettes off. I've played down there at the University of Miami, as we know, and I got to tell you, man, the crowd was great. The game was great, and when you get a coach or manager not happy with your production, and you know that you still got a lot to do and still got a lot to go through. Not everybody was happy there on the English side there. We'll get to that here in a minute, but we love talking World Cup with our friend Michelle Kaufman from the Miami Herald, who has covered numerous World Cups. And first and foremost, I want to start off with Team USA. We bring Michelle Kaufman in. Michelle, let's start it here with Team USA and really the fallout here of what you've seen so far this past week. Just your takeaways on what you saw in the game and what you've seen with the fallout after the game.
Well, first of all, hello. It's good to see you again. A lot. I'm thinking. Let's see what's happened since we last. A lot happens in a week during the World Cup, right? It seems like the USA. It seems like that was 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't. I think it's actually progress for American soccer that people are pissed, upset, and debating the U.S. team, because in the past, I remember I've covered 7 World Cups. For most of the World Cups, the USA is just like, yay, rah, rah, USA, way to go, boys. Way to go. You tried your best. You did your best. We're just not good enough. Oh, well, let's move on to the teams that really, belong in the final 8. Now, I know soccer in this country has evolved to the point where, first of all, the public is much more knowledgeable. I'll use you as an example. I don't know. You probably were not talking about the World Cup with the passion and the and the knowledge that you do now 4 years ago or 8 years ago or 12 years ago. So I think that in general, the American sports public has caught on in the sense that everyone knows a little bit more. And the more people know, the more opinions they have. And this is a good thing. The fact that people are debating who should be the coach of the team, these are things that happen in other countries. These are things that were not happening really in the United States, except for the real diehard, the American outlaws, those fans that are the diehards that have been there from day one, the OGs. The OGs have always been debating all of these issues. And is Pulisic really good? Is he soft? Was Landon Donovan that good or was he soft? Blah, blah, blah. These are things that people who are soccer people would debate, but the rest of the country was still totally obsessed with the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball and didn't have strong opinions about the U.S. team, barely knew the names of the players, probably didn't even know the name of the coach, a lot of people. Now, we've progressed to the point where American sports fans are invested in our national team and care. And they care. Did Pulisic really, is he the best leader for this team? Is he really that good or is he not? Is he committed or is he not committed enough? Is Pochettino, did he do a good job? Should he stay on as coach? Should they rehire him or should they get someone else? I think it's great that these debates are going on. As far as do I think they overperformed, underperformed, or did just about what was expected, I would say that they underperformed. I would have expected them to go one more round. I think this team was good enough if they played the way they played against Paraguay and earlier on. I think they were good enough to make the quarterfinals. I don't know that they would have gone beyond that, but I think they were good enough to match the 2002 team, which is the team that went to the quarterfinals. So I do think that they underperformed by one round, but I do think that they succeeded in the sense that they won over so many fans, and Pochettino did too, with his love of America and country music and, country roads, singing the songs and all that stuff. I think America really caught on to this team at a time that we needed something to unite us because there's so much division politically. I think that the U.S. team away from the field did a lot for soccer in America that will be beneficial going forward. But do I think that they are as good as the four teams that are in the semifinals? No, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We still have a ways to go. But I think it's great that people are debating it and that people care enough about it. I think that's a great step forward.
Boy, I'll tell you, there's a lot to unpack there. To me, I was texting Landon Donovan and I was texting him and saying, to me, it just looks like it's about the Jimmies and Joes. I mean, you can have the greatest manager on the planet. You can have the greatest head coach in the NFL when Belichick doesn't have Brady. I mean, Michelle, he's not Bill Belichick. I mean, so it really doesn't matter to me who the coach is. This comes down to the Jimmies and Joes. That's a talent gap still there between the top four teams, or maybe even the top 8 teams. Do you agree?
Yeah, there is still a talent gap. I think the gap I think it's shrunk. I think we do have some talented players, not enough for a country of 330 million people. I mean, we should have 23 better players for a country our size. When you look at Norway has 5 million people and they found 23 guys who are better, probably than our 23 guys. And we have 330 million and they have 5 million. That's a whole other debate for another day of why that is. I mean, we have a lot of other sports. For the rest of the world, this is it. The top 23 athletes in those countries play on their national team, period. That's every kid who grows up in any of these other countries. I mean, I guess in Norway, there's the Nordic sports, there's the winter sports, and that's what always dominated in Norway. And the big change in Norway is that not only are they winning now at gold medals, cross country skiing and stuff like that, which they've always dominated, all of a sudden now they look like a soccer power, even though they haven't been in the World Cup in 28 years. So this is their first time in the World Cup in 28 years. And the U.S. has been in World Cups when Norway was not in the World Cup and did not qualify. Again, that's also partly because the European qualifying is harder than qualifying from CONCACAF. You know, qualifying from Europe is harder than qualifying in our region with the countries that the USA is competing against. So there's still a gap. Yes, there is still a gap. Even if the United States is the US, Mexico, and Canada were the three best teams in CONCACAF in our region, which includes North America, Central America, and Canada and the Caribbean. You know, that's still not the same as being one of the top teams in Europe or one of the top teams in South America. The South American Federation, CONMEBOL, still has more depth than CONCACAF has in our region, because outside of US, Canada, and Mexico, there's a drop. So that's what they're competing against.
I got to ask you here too, Michelle. You know, we'll have to expand this into the next segment here, but boy, one thing I noticed. So, like, the best players in Argentina are the captains of their team. The best player in Norway is the captain of his team. The best player in Germany is the captain of his team. How come that doesn't translate to America when you're supposedly the best player? And inside of a minute here, how come our best player is not the team captain?
Well, I think probably the head coach must have not thought that Pulisic was captain material, maybe, because, you know, he skipped the Gold Cup last summer. Is that really your most committed player when he decided to pick and choose what events he was going to play in? You know, so I think he wanted a player who, you know, Tim Ream is a guy who was so dedicated, and no, not the best player on the team, but maybe the best leader.
Let's expand more on that, because, again, I'm seeing all these guys, and like, you're educating me as I'm watching this World Cup, Michelle, and I'm like, wait a minute here. The best player on our team is not the captain. That's usually a sign that's not a good sign there. More with Michelle Kaufman. We'll get what's coming up with the Final Four next here on SportsGrid.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar? Cheater? Gaslighter.
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
Michelle Kaufman, awesome here with us here talking World Cup here from the Miami Herald. And, one last thing here on Team USA. Are you in the camp with Alexi Lawless that there's nothing wrong with the process on looking for players in this country, Michelle? Or are you on the side of Landon Donovan, who says until we make this thing more open for all to be able to play, every American kid to have an opportunity to become a soccer player? What camp are you on here? What side of the camp do you believe that has to change in the process of finding talent?
Well, I'm probably somewhere in the middle, and I respect both of those guys a lot. I know both of them. I think we have enough. I think the pool is big enough with the country that we have. Even the pool that we have should be big enough to find 23 players. We're not asking for 2,300. We're asking for 23 players who are good enough. I think the pool is pretty good that we have. I think, yes, I think there are some, obviously, with pay to play, the clubs and all this, it costs money. I know my daughter played 14 years of competitive. Well, I don't know if it wasn't that competitive when she was in U6, but she played from U5 to U19. So, she played club on a pretty high level. She played at her high school. And yeah, you had to pay for all these tournaments and all that stuff. I do think they're doing a better job now, like the MLS teams. They are reaching out. And I know for a fact, because Inter Miami has some kids that are on the senior team now that were inner city kids who were playing, like a Honduran kid who was playing in a neighborhood park in Little Havana. And he was invited to go to the tryout for Inter Miami, along with the Weston FC, more rich kids who were going to that club. They have been trying to reach out grassroots to find minority kids, especially Hispanic, because, in Hispanic households, those little kids are growing up with soccer on their TV screen from their parents, from the womb. From the time they come out, their TV screen has soccer on it, whereas our kids have generally American, whatever you call American, non-soccer families. Their TVs are tuned into the NFL and college sports and the NBA and Major League Baseball. Hispanic kids grow up with soccer morning, noon, and night on their TVs. Most of their fathers played soccer. Their brothers play soccer. They play in neighborhood leagues. It's kind of like playground basketball in our country, in the inner city. The inner city Hispanic communities, instead of playground basketball, they play playground soccer. So they develop a love for the sport. It's not something that you do Tuesday and Thursday from 4 to 6 with a dad lining up some cones. That's not how they're learning the sport. They're learning the sport the way Landon learned it, because Landon grew up in a Mexican neighborhood in LA, and that's why he speaks such good Spanish. Landon grew up playing on the street with those Mexican kids. And what happens is, just like our playground basketball players, you develop a love and a passion for the sport without coaches around and without rules and without cones and parents. And number two, you also develop creativity. You develop creativity because you are out there just freelancing. You're playing, on some little field somewhere with a bunch of guys in your neighborhood, the same way our basketball players do. They develop a passion for the sport and a creativity for the sport that I think is probably missing from the United States talent pool. And the people in charge of U.S. soccer are trying, I know they are trying to tap more into those inner city Hispanic communities in particular, and Black communities, because there are obviously African-American, soccer players. Look at the team. Our team was very diverse this time. And a few, last time too. So I think they're trying harder to not to just have it be a club sport, grown-up club sport team where it's just white kids whose parents had money and could drive them around to these, these tournaments and whatever. I think they're trying harder to tap into those communities. And I do think it's essential. It's essential to tap into those communities because there are some great players, I am sure, in this country that nobody knows about because they're just playing on somebody's, backyard, the same way there are playground basketball players who are probably good enough to play in the NBA, and we don't know who they are. So I think it's a similar kind of similar situation.
I want to ask you about, is this the first time that we've had the top 4 teams make it to the semis here, and what you think
Yes.
about the matchups here? So, from what I'm understanding, this is the first time we've seen the top 4 teams.
It's the first time
make
that the
the
4
semis.
teams, the first time that the top 4 ranked teams coming into the tournament make the semis. I mean, look, you look at that grid, you look at that draw. You know, there have been so many great stories along the way. All the cute little teams won our hearts and did everything. And the Tartan Army and the Norwegian rowers and, you know, Ivory Coast and Curacao and Cape Verde. And I mean, all of these countries did great and won our hearts, and including the United States. The United States had some incredible moments, a lot of proud moments for American fans. But now, at the end of the day, look who's left. France against Spain, England against Argentina. Those 2 countries have a long history on and off the field. That is going to be unbelievable. And then France and Spain, you know, all 4 of those teams, to be honest, the 3rd place game is in Miami. That 3rd place game is going to be between the 2 losers of those 2 games, which means 2 of the top 4 teams are going to be playing in the 3rd place game, the bronze medal game. It's an incredible, to be honest, this World Cup, I know people complain about the ticket prices, the thing with, we did not discuss the Balogun Trump fiasco, all that mess that went on. I think that affected the U.S. team too, by the way. I do think that affected negatively the U.S. team, and it gave Belgium more motivation, because when they scored, they did a Trump dance. So that was on their minds. And they posted 4-1 overturned that. They posted that on social media, 4-1. So it was on their mind. If it was on Belgium's mind, it was on Balogun's mind, and it was on his teammates' mind. And I think it was a distraction. I do think it was probably a distraction. But aside from that, I think this World Cup has been unbelievable so far. And having these 4 teams in the semis and having the top players competing for the Golden Boot, you've got Mbappe and Messi and Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham all still competing for the Golden Boot. It's unbelievable. It's been a great World Cup so far, and we're not done yet.
No, absolutely. Michelle, we'll catch up with you again. This has been fabulous. Thank you so much. Sileo says next here on SportsGrid. You know what's becoming more apparent now is gambling in sports. And now we're seeing so many more stories that are really starting to affect both sports when it comes to college and pro football. We're starting to see it now in Major League Baseball. We're seeing it across the landscape now on how much gambling is now being part of the everyday life of major sports in America. And I say this to you, when I see some of these ads and I see what people are doing, like in the NFL, you're looking at the modern day tobacco and alcohol ads that were forbidden back in the day. You know, the National Football League and Major League Baseball used to have tobacco ads to be able to sell for them to be able to raise money for their sport. Well, those became outlawed after a while. How, if you're the National Football League, and I use the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA are all in this together as well, but I use the NFL. How are you, with a clean conscience, sitting there telling people that it is cool to gamble when you know that there's addictive behavior people out there that will take this thing a little bit too far? I call this right here, in my opinion, I call this blood money. If you're the National Football League, Major League Baseball, how are you, with a clean conscience, addicting people to gambling? Look, not everybody is going to be a degenerate gambler. Not everybody is going to go out and spend their livelihoods, but it affects people that have an addictive behavior. Aren't you pushing that behavior to the brink with these ads and promoting it? I mean, back in the day when the baseball players used to use chewing tobacco, and they used to have it that it was common that players were promoting like Skoal tobacco or what have you, and they were chewing it and they were doing television ads for it. Those were also at the height during the tobacco time when you were sitting there promoting tobacco to underage kids. Well, now that gambling is legal in this country and we have apps and the FanDuels and the DraftKings of the world, how are you not pushing some of these addictive behavior people to being a person that goes out and gets addicted to gambling? How is this not something that you look at if you're the NFL with a moral conscience? Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and play holier than thou than you, but at the end of the day, how is this not considered blood money? You're pushing people who have an addictive behavior to being gamblers, and you think that's cool? How do you sit there and continue doing this and pushing those products like FanDuel or fantasy football and sitting there saying, and then you put an asterisk underneath it, or you put a disclaimer there saying, hey, gambling can be addictive, and yet you're still doing it. Hey, do me a favor. Don't take these pills, but we're selling the pills anyway. And if it doesn't kill you, don't worry about it. I don't know how you sit there and not think that the National Football League or Major League Baseball or NBA or any sports league is not sitting there pushing something that could be totally addicted to certain personalities. I mean, folks, I don't know how the NFL doesn't look at it with a clear conscience. We're seeing the Brendan Sorsby stories. You think this is going to go away? This is going to become more of an issue. You're going to start to see more of these type of cases. Because again, if I'm being influenced by the National Football League and you have over 150 million people watching my Super Bowl, or you've got 75,000 people watching my playoff games or my holiday games during the holidays, how are you not sitting there promoting gambling and really addictive behavior? I don't get it, man. I look at it now and I look and say that this stuff comes down to being blood money. When you're pushing somebody to lose their home or losing their fortune and you're helping that behavior, how's the NFL with a clean conscience continue running these ads like that when you sit there and say, hey, listen, don't worry about it. It's cool. But if you've got an addictive behavior and you lose your fortune because you're gambling on a National Football League game, and you're embracing that you think that's cool? What's the difference between pushing and soliciting alcohol or tobacco? You're pushing gambling, an addictive behavior that can ruin people's lives. Look, again, I'm not playing holier than thou. I'm not a gambler. I don't gamble. That's not my deal. I don't like throwing money in a trash can and lighting it on fire. You didn't build Las Vegas and the Strip because Las Vegas and those casinos lose. They built it on people with poor personal afflictions of gambling. That's how they built Vegas and Atlantic City. They didn't build it because they lost money. They built it because they took advantage of people. Isn't that what's going on now? A new revenue source on being able to take advantage of your behavior, and to some folks, an addictive behavior. I have no idea how you have a clean conscience with that. Because, oh, wait, I do know. The National Football League makes money on it. That's how we know. Remember, league loves that cash register and green. Rick Barry, we'll talk about all these trades going on in the NBA. Here on SportsGrid. You know, I love talking NBA basketball with our friend Rick Barry. And get this, I sent a text message to Rob Pelinka, and I told him that we were getting Rick Barry on. And a huge fan, and he said one of the top 20 players in the history of the sport. And I'm like, wow, what a compliment there. We're going to talk a little bit about LeBron here in a minute, but Rick joins us now here, and we're going to go across all these trades. And I want to get Rick's takeaway on some of these trades here. And Rick, I appreciate you doing this. I want to get your thought first and foremost on Giannis going to Miami and going down there with Eric Spoelstra and going with Pat Riley there. I mean, you know, you got Bam down there too. I mean, what do you think of the move there that Milwaukee made in sending him down to Miami instead of sending Giannis to Boston?
Well, you know, a lot of this stuff. Well, some of the other trades are still haven't been finalized yet. The other ones, but this one obviously has taken place. You know, certainly the caliber that he is as a player, you know, is a big deal. But it still all comes down to who do you surround them with? What's the chemistry going to be like? There's so many questions that have to be answered when you make moves like this. And they've got to tinker with them. You know, Pat's got to figure out, and Spoelstra's got to figure out who they want to play, how they want to play together, what offense you want to put in to utilize the talent of your players. Because I always believe that as a coach in the NBA, you really shouldn't be one of these system coaches. You know, you get a lot of that in football. You can relate to that, right? Football has a lot of system coaches. Well, if you draft specifically for players to fill the positions to play in that system, okay, that could work. But in basketball, it's such a sport with athletes that are so amazing who can do so many different things. Sometimes you put the guys in the system, it doesn't really take advantage of his talent to the extent that you should. And so I've always felt that you have to analyze your personnel and come up with an offense that's going to utilize them in the best manner possible, and then get the entire team to commit to your defense philosophy. Because you've heard me say this a lot, is that defense doesn't win championships, but you don't usually win championships if you're not a good defensive team. You got to be a good defensive team in order to win. There's only 2 times ever in the history of the NBA, I think, that 2 teams won championships that were not in the top 10. So it's a critical element. So all of that has to be taken into consideration for that trade with Giannis, and the same thing with a lot of the other ones that are going to be taking place. You just don't know when you start making wholesale moves like that.
How about this, Rick? If you had to take these 2 guys to build a basketball team and to surround great players with role players, would you take Jerry West or would you take Pat Riley? If you had to build a team and a roster, who would you pick from those 2 guys as the better executive?
That's very difficult to say. They've both had great success. I mean, certainly West had a longer period of success with the teams that he was with and what he was able to do to keep the Lakers at such a high level for so many years. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. Both of them understand the game. They understand the talent. But then again, it comes down to what does the coach do with that talent? That's the whole big key. And I think that one of the problems in the league has been that general managers a lot of times make the final decisions without taking the coach into consideration. I think that's a huge mistake. I think they should be working together, kind of like what Popovich did with R.C. Buford down in San Antonio. When you work together, I think it's a better situation. You don't want to force a player on a coach who might not really like him and not like the way that he plays. So that's a critical element. And a lot of times, the guys made the mistake. I mean, same thing with Jerry. He made a mistake. He brought in some coaches to coach the team, and they didn't do very well. Did a great job with his personnel, but he had a coach that didn't utilize the personnel properly.
What happened to Kawhi in Los Angeles with the Clippers? I mean, Trent Ridden, the general manager, Steve Ballmer, they were bringing him in, Rick, to be really a guy that was going to contend and compete in that same building at the time with the Los Angeles Lakers. What happened with Kawhi Leonard in Los Angeles? How come it didn't really get to where it needed
to? He had some injuries. Well, he had some injuries, which is always a major factor. And then you still also have again, it gets down to what? Kawhi Leonard himself is not going to turn a team around without having guys to play with that play the game the right way.
Hopefully we're able to reconnect here. And again, that's part of the issue here with Kawhi Leonard too. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, obviously, you got to look at the scenario there that when they brought him in, Steve Ballmer and those guys, remember, he was being brought in to contend and compete with the Los Angeles Lakers at the time, and it just wasn't happening. I mean, make no mistake about it. They brought that guy in, and they made that move from Toronto to bring him into Los Angeles, and they were supposed to be a team that was going to contend for the West. Now, they contended a little bit, obviously, when they had Paul George there, and they were able to try to build that basketball team around. But Kawhi Leonard, since he left Toronto and he won that NBA championship, now they're trying to make a move to send him back to Toronto. But Kawhi Leonard, huge fan. I covered him when he was with San Diego State and with Steve Fisher and those guys, and I loved him, man. I loved him when he was in San Antonio, but he never really ever became the guy with the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, load management became something. The injuries obviously were a major issue for him. As Rick just said, make no mistake about it, him being able to recoup some of his career there in Toronto, maybe he goes back to friendly confines, and they're able to build that basketball team once again around him. But make no mistake about it, and we were talking again about whether –
I was on Wi-Fi. I'm sorry about that, but it's just popped out twice on me.
Got you there, Rick. I mean, so do you think he can go to Toronto? That deal obviously on pause right now. Do you think he can recoup his career in a different environment going to Toronto if that deal ends up happening?
No, who knows? I mean, basically, it was a failure. They brought him in. They didn't get to do what they needed to do. It's so much more complicated than people think. It's not. One person can make a big difference, but only if the other people complement him in the way that's needed in order for them to be able to be successful. That's why basketball is a team game. This is not tennis. I'm watching Wimbledon here. It's not an individual sport. It's not golf. You've got to have teammates to do well. Even in our case, so we didn't have a lot of big name established veteran players and had a couple of rookies, especially Jamal Wilkes, who was Keith Wilkes at the time, was rookie of the year. And to have two, and Phil Smith, another rookie who helped contribute to us. But we won as a team. That's how you win. You win as a team. It takes the entire team to be able to win. And that's why basketball is so interesting. And that's why I just go crazy when I see all these people making all these moves thinking that's going to be the difference. Who knows? There's so many answers that have to come about it. Same way with Philadelphia, and getting Brown. I can see why they did that. They got a guy who's a multi-all-star player, right, Paul George, but they got a lot of draft picks and stuff, and they figured, well, maybe we can break that up, and they did that to build for the future. Probably Philadelphia is the one that may benefit most by that, bringing in a guy like him to Philadelphia, because they came pretty close to doing well last season. So all of these factors have to be taken into consideration. And then even if everything is perfect, then you got to pray and go to church and light candles and novenas or whatever, depending on your religion, to hope that they stay healthy.
Well, here, real quick here, Rick, then we'll talk a little bit about LeBron in the next segment here. That Jaylen Brown deal, do you like it?
Yeah, I think for the Sixers, it's a good move. Yeah, I don't know. I know about the Knicks. I mean, about the Celtics, how great a move it's going to be for them, because you're getting a guy at the end of his career who's had injury problems. Yes, he's an established veteran, all-star player, but, how's that going to play out? And then the big thing is, is everybody going to be healthy next year for them? But I like Brown going there. I think Brown could be a big addition to that team, to Philly.
We'll continue more of our conversation with Rick Barry here. Don't forget our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. With over $30 billion recovered, my friends, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. I tell you about the family in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650K. They got nearly $30 million in settlement. The family down in Florida that was initially offered $350,000, they got nearly $12 million in settlement. There is no company like them. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sales sent you. We will talk more a little bit about what's going on here with the Los Angeles Lakers and also LeBron. I mentioned Rob Pelinka last week. We brought up an interesting story about LeBron James and Rob Pelinka and Kobe Bryant. We'll get Rick Barry's thoughts on it, and potentially where should he land? Cleveland, Philly, or Miami with Pat Riley and Bam and Giannis. We'll do that next. Keep it right here on SportsGrid. All right, so we were just talking in a timeout here with all the money that's being spent here in the NBA. Rick, your best year, you scored 35 points. That may not even be, in your eyes, your best season that you ever had. If you were on the open market today in your prime at 35 and 8 and maybe 7 assists, how much money would Rick Barry be commanding right now if you were in
I
the
try
open?
not to. I can't relate to it. I try not to even think about it. I mean, I'd have a 5-year deal between 300 and 400 million dollars guaranteed. It's ludicrous to think that somebody would get paid that much money to go play basketball. Hell, I thought I was as happy as a pig in slop in my year as a rookie when I made $18,000 as a second pick in the draft. 18,000. I mean, it's like, so anyway, the lowest paid player in the NBA last year made more than twice as much money as I made in my best year, and he didn't even hardly play. He sat on the bench.
What do you hear when you hear people like JJ Redick make a comment that guys like you are playing against plumbers? And you guys, again, today's NBA is a lot different than the NBA when you guys played, like you and Bob Cousy.
That's such a stupid, right now, wait, that's such a silly comment to make. Okay. If the guys I played with had available to them the technology and the training that these guys have available to them, every one of us would be even better than we were back then. I'd be faster, stronger, quicker, more endurance, jump higher. I would be so much better a player. So to compare how we played back then to who you're playing against, no. If we were training like these guys trained, every one of us would be even better than we were before. And a lot of us back then, even without the training, are better than a lot of guys that are playing today. Because we know the game. We know the game. We were taught how to play the game the most efficient and effective way possible. We were basically, the majority of us were fundamentally sound. A lot of players today are not fundamentally sound.
So today's guys are great athletes. They're just not skilled players with the skill set that you guys had. That's your opinion. And you said if you had today's technology and today's training and today's nutrition, you'd be right now with the 3-point line. Rick Barry is scoring 40 points a game, right?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, because I never really had the three. I had to learn how to do it. I wasn't a great three. I was only a good free throw shooter. I got to be like 33%, which is 50 from twos. But if I were playing today, I can assure you, I wouldn't be satisfied myself if I wasn't at least a 40% shooter from 3-point range.
Wow. All right, let me ask you here a story going on in Los Angeles. What happened with LeBron's exit there? You would have thought maybe potentially they would wanted him to remain a Laker. I mean, he just said he would take the league minimum at $3.9 million. His time in Los Angeles, what do you make of the fact that they didn't really want him back, Rick? I mean, they wanted to move on and they wanted to go forward here without him.
Yeah, well, that's a decision they had to make. I don't know what's going on in the inner circles there. I mean, you mentioned some of the teams he might go to. I mean, talk about Golden State possibly. I wouldn't mind seeing him there to give Steph a chance to maybe win another championship. But if I was the Warriors, I'd be worried about they have so many old players. They probably play oldest age team average wise in the league. But sure, I'd love to see him go there. But hey, the bottom line is he brought them championships. It was a great deal for them. They got a lot of publicity. They had a lot of success. But boy, you want to talk about the team revamping? Oh my God, the Lakers are just tearing themselves apart and rebuilding. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of team they have next year. There's no telling what it's going to be.
Rick, what would you do if you were LeBron? Would you go to a place like Cleveland, go back? You've already done that, been there. Do you go to maybe a place like you just said when they added Jaylen Brown here? That deal will get consummated soon in the next couple of weeks, but maybe he goes to Philadelphia, plays with Embiid, or does he go down with Giannis and go back to Eric Spoelstra and those guys and go down to Miami where that's going to give him a great opportunity with Bam and himself? They need a shooter, Rick. What would Rick Barry do if you're LeBron?
Well, he's not a shooter. He's a scorer. So the bottom line, I don't know. I mean, who knows what LeBron wants to do? But certainly I would say the two choices for him probably would be Miami or Golden State to play with Steph. He loves Steph. He doesn't have to go that far from home. He stays in the state of California. He's been to Cleveland. He's done that there. And sure, he did it down in Miami as well with Dwayne and the other guys. But yeah, that would be a pretty formidable team with those three guys in the front line for the Miami Heat. So for a chance to win, he might have a better chance winning going down to Miami if he decided he was going just to try to win another championship. That might be the best choice for him there.
I'll tell you what, Rick. You mentioned this the last time you were on about Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama did not take the super max. He took the 25% because he wanted to do something that you said. You said that, if they could keep that team together, that San Antonio Spurs team, they're going to learn how to win. They're going to be a championship team. That's the first sign that he wants to be in San Antonio, pretty much the same way that Tim Duncan and maybe even, David Robinson. That was a great sign if you're a Spurs fan.
Yeah, I think it was really smart on his part. I mean, how much money do you need? He's got enough money to live 50 lifetimes. And so to give up some of that money to have the team be able to keep a lot of the other guys there and to build a dynasty, I would think that would be much more rewarding to be able to do that, to be a part of something special. And San Antonio had a special run. They just couldn't get that back-to-back going for them. It's like every other year they were winning championships when Tim Duncan was back down there. But yeah, obviously being around Tim Duncan and seeing what he accomplished down there, and probably Tim talking to him about how great it could be, his mind is in the right spot right now. I mean, to be able to give up that much money to be able to stay there, he obviously loves his teammates. So that's going to be interesting to see. So for a young guy to make a decision like that, very impressive.
So I'm going to put the number out, Rick, and I'm going to aggravate you here a little bit. I think Rick Barry makes $65 million a year. If you're in today's NBA in your prime, I think you're $65 million annually. Do you like the number, Rick? He is
no. No, I can't even relate. Seriously, I can't.
Heard your wife say, "Tell him to stop."
Still, I can't relate to it. Honestly, I truly can't relate. I never heard the word million in my contract negotiation, so that's in a different planet and a different solar system that I was involved in. And I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity that I had. My life is great. I've got an incredible wife and family and health, which is the most important thing. And now I've got to get ready. You see my Sojourn shirt on. I'm getting ready with my wife to go on a bike tour. We're going into Glacier National Park on a tour and up into Canada. So I'm going to keep myself in shape and have a good time with the beauty of the United States and southern Canada. So all the best to you. There's always so much to talk about in sports. I mean, it's crazy. I know. I've been in that business for such a long time. You always hope that something controversial happens before you go on the air, because then you got plenty to talk about.
Hey, Rick, have your great bike ride, and I appreciate you so much, you and your family. Thank you so much, Rick. You got it. More with Bryce Harper. What's going on with FanDuel next here on Sports? You know, this story with gambling now, we mentioned it in the last hour here. Now you have this story here with Bryce Harper and FanDuel and DraftKings. Now, again, it's come up now that there was a separate party here that ended up putting a video together, and they ended up sending it to this guy. And there was a gentleman who had lost all of his money, had spent over $2 million, had lost his home, and was talking about committing suicide. Philly star Bryce Harper recorded a personal video at the request of FanDuel VIP host Per Philly Sport. The client ended up losing nearly $2 million, his house, and police had to stop him for committing suicide. Major League Baseball and Harper had nothing to say for it. And at the end of the day, these stories are becoming more and more. We just come off the heels of this Brendan Sorsby story where a kid lost his eligibility and his opportunity to play. Thank God he still has an opportunity to potentially go to the National Football League and next year's 2027 draft. But if it wasn't the case, here was a kid that was going to lose his eligibility. The nil that he had signed, $4.1 million with Texas Tech Red Raiders, this kid could have lost everything. And we go back to the conversation again of what's the accountability for these sports leagues? What's the accountability for college football? What's the accountability for the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, and the NHL? I mean, you have to have accountability here. If you're going to sell to the public the opportunity to gamble, and for people to be able to lose their fortune, you have to understand the collateral damage that you're now getting in bed with here. And this was some of the things that people were very concerned about when the opportunity for gambling to become legalized happened. And now, guess what? These organizations and these pro sports leagues are knee deep in it. The National Football League's owner, Bob Kraft of the New England Patriots, is a part owner with Adam Schefter in a company that's a sports gaming app. And these are the same folks that are telling you on one hand, hey, we don't want our players being involved in gambling. And on the other hand, you got a league that is knee deep in it. You got a professional football team in Las Vegas, and also you've got the national championship game that's going to be at that same facility in Las Vegas this coming year for the national championship game in college football. My question is, are you trying to get your cake and eat it at the same time when we're talking about gambling? It's a great way for teams to make money. It's a great way for players in each respected league to make additional money. The collateral damage is here, dude. That was really a sad sign here. And Major League Baseball had no response to it when it came to that video being sent to that guy. So you sent him a video and the guy was thinking of committing suicide, and you're cool with that? And Major League Baseball or any other sports league has no comment to be made on how you're getting people addicted to gambling? I don't know how, again, and I mentioned the phrase blood money. I don't know how some of these leagues are not in a position here where you're sitting there reevaluating yourself on how you're selling this to the American public. You know, we mentioned it before. This is the same line of what happened with the alcohol ads back in the day and the tobacco ads, getting people addicted to tobacco and getting people addicted to alcohol. You're now getting people addicted to gambling. So at the end of the day, what do these organizations do? There are more of them, these apps. FanDuel and DraftKings are a major part of the National Football League. Look at all of these sports leagues that you have. Look at all of the fantasy football leagues. And by the way, I don't play fantasy football. That's really not my deal. But I get how much fun it is. It keeps you engaged. You want to know why television ratings and gambling has helped? People don't realize this. You know why gambling is a major part of the NFL? Well, when you've got a 37-0 blowout and you've got a guy that you've got prop bets on whether or not he's going to score a touchdown or he's going to get 100 yards in receptions or whether he's going to gain 100 yards rushing or throw for 2 touchdowns. That's what you have people doing now. That's why the television ratings on these blowouts don't go anywhere else. And again, I think college football and a lot of people have a lot of issues right now when it comes to professional sports gambling. So make no mistake about it. You see a video like Bryce Harper and what Harper's doing with that, And you see Major League Baseball, make no mistake about it, college football, the NFL, and everyone else has to have a come to Jesus conversation when it comes to talking about gambling and sports. It is now becoming a problem. And you're going to see more of the Brandon Sorsby stories, folks. And you're going to see more of this because of NIL that's being involved in the college game today. And it is not really where people want to be, in my opinion. Look, college football is right now growing at an incredible rate. And it is absolutely an awesome sport, and I love it. Make no mistake about it. One of my favorite people to talk to, he is Dabo Swinney. What a tremendous coach. Next with us here on SportsGrid. This is incredible here because 18 full seasons now. What? 18 full seasons. He became the interim head coach in 2008, and he's been there 18 years. Dabo Swinney joins us now here. And, Coach, let me ask you, man, right out of the gate, can you believe you've been there 18 years, going back to when you were first an interim coach and you got the job in season during the '08 season?
No, it's been a blessing. I mean, we talked. My wife and I were talking about that. We just celebrated our 32nd wedding anniversary this past week, and so, just we were just talking about how time flies, especially when it's you're doing time with people that you love, and we've raised our family here in Clemson, and it's actually my 24th season because I was the receiver coach my first 6 years, so just. It's been a blessing. It has gone so fast. Seems like yesterday. And honestly, when we came up here to take this job in February of '03, I thought I'd be here a year or two. And, here we are going into our 24th season and 18th full season as the head coach. So it's been a blessing and just it's a great journey. It's an amazing place, a bunch of great people. And time has really flown here because we've had a lot of fun. And we love the people that we've been with, and we love the place.
How have you changed in those 24 years, 18 years as head coach? How has Dabo Swinney changed?
Oh, just wiser, like all of us. We have raised 3 sons. Our youngest son was born here. So, you learn a lot as a parent. And I like to look at my job as a coach as a parent. I always tell people I got a PhD in 18 to 23-year-olds because I've been one. I've raised 3 of them in my own house, and they're 27, 26, and 22 now, and then for 30 years I've been doing life with 18 to 23-year-olds. So you learn a lot. You certainly grow wiser as you experience things. I mean, there's no greater teacher than experience, and just grown in so many ways. Again, grown as a husband, 32 years of marriage. That'll grow you and teach you a few things as well. And then obviously just through competition in this game. This game changes you and grows you and strengthens you and teaches you. That hey, you don't always win, and you celebrate those times when you do, whether you win by 1 point or 50 points. And, when you have a bad day, a bad season, a bad game, whatever, hey, you get back up and you go back at it. Learn so many things, but certainly just a lot wiser at 56. I came here when I was 33, and so I'm 56 now, and certainly 18 years as a head coach and playing the game and being an assistant, and just so many great people that I've been able to interact with throughout my life. All of that has really shaped me to this day.
Coach, for you, 2 national championships. I wonder how do you stay focused? And what I mean by focused is this: there's so many ebb and flows, highs and lows, injuries, the landscape of college football changing too. Correct me if I'm wrong. I heard there was some discussion on whether or not, you like the college game, you love Clemson, but I'm not sure you really like the position where college sports is right now and where college football is. Nothing to do with really Clemson. It's kind of the environment. So my question to you is, have you ever wavered in saying, this is it? I mean, I've got to pull a Nick Saban here, and the game again, it's changing around me. I'm not changing, but the game around me is changing.
No, well, things always change. But to me, I think, now is the time where we need leadership. These kids need leadership. They need people that will, really truly come alongside them and help them navigate, because it's not in a great place. And I don't think there's a single coach out there that'll say, oh, everything's great. It's not. We have a lot of challenges, because we don't have a lot of order. And, we're just like a ship that's just kind of drifting in the high seas. And, so we need somebody to help, navigate the ship. And so there's a lot of great things. I don't think there's ever been a better time to be a college football player, but there's also never been more of a challenging time to navigate all the things that come with being a part of college football. And it's simply, again, because we just don't have any order. I mean, there's a lot of great things, and that's what I focus on. I focus on the great things that we do control. We've got great young men here. We lead the nation in graduation. We lead the nation in retention. The kids, this is an environment where we've created a lot of value in the place and the value in the people. So yeah, there's a lot of it changes, but I love the challenge. I love the challenge of competing every year. As you said, this is my 18th full season here, and every year is a new journey, and some years you are better than others. But I love the challenge of, hey, let's see if we can pull it all together, and let's go play. And you count them all up at the end of the year, and you see what you got to do to get better from there. We've won some championships along the way, but all of those things, ultimately, to me, it's not about that. It's really just about loving the player, and that's never changed for me. Man, I love the player. I love helping them figure life out. I love helping them get better as a player, but more importantly, I love helping equip them as men, so that like today, I'm about to go to Austin Bryant. He was a defensive end for me, back on the 2 national championship teams, and I'm going to his wedding tonight, and I'm super excited about that. And that, to me, is what it's all about. He's from Pavo, Georgia, and I remember this little kid coming in here, and now he's a 31-year-old man getting married. He's retired from the NFL, had a great career here, got his degrees. He's equipped as a man. because you're a man a lot longer than you are a football player. So that part is still what motivates me. All the other stuff, there's challenges, but there's challenges in everything you do.
I got to tell you, Coach, you remind me so much of Jimmy Johnson because 40 years later, I'm best friends with him, Dave Wannstedt, Butch Davis, all those guys. And they treat me like I was 19 years old back in the day. Nothing's changed. And to me, that's a sign of a really great coach there, too. And Coach, is this a fair statement when it comes to the kind of player you're looking at? Jimmy used to tell me, I'll look at everybody, but not everybody's going to be a Miami Hurricane. You look at everybody, but not everybody's going to be a Clemson Tiger. Is that a fair comment on how you look for your players and the kind of players you want there at Clemson?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we've won a lot of games. Never had a number one recruiting class. We've won a bunch of championships. I think I've got the most draft picks of any active coach in college football. And we also offer the fewest kids every single year. We're dead last in offers. We evaluate everybody. We look at everybody, but I think fit is important, and everybody. I think the fit for Clemson, the fit for this school, that school, because it's not just necessarily the school and the environment. It's the people that you're doing football life with every single day. That matters. Just like not everybody's meant to be married, right? Like
Yeah.
it's there's a it's gotta be a good fit. So we evaluate everybody, but we offer very few, and that's just been our process. Our process is very different than a lot of places, and we have a lot of conviction in that. We're far from perfect, but it's served us well here at Clemson.
It's a family atmosphere there, and Coach, I got to tell you, I just absolutely love the program too. We're going to talk more with Dabo Swinney. I want to get his thoughts on the upcoming 2026 Clemson Tiger and the ACC as well. Also, the college football playoff. We will talk with him and get his comments on really the winningest coach right now active in college football is Dabo Swinney. We'll do that next. Keep it right here on SportsGrid.
I know you didn't. Talk!
I'm innocent.
Got the wrong guy. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time.
Yeah. Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury? That's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
Great conversation going on with our friend here, Dabo Swinney, the head football coach at Clemson. Coach, 2026 Tigers, what are we going to see this year?
Oh man, just a gritty bunch. We're excited about the opportunity. We got a challenging schedule as always. Going to open up in Baton Rouge against LSU. Obviously, they've been well, documented. Obviously, hiring Coach Kiffin and what a great job he's done, and the players they brought in there. So we got our hands full right out of the gate. But man, just a tough, gritty team. Bunch of nobodies just trying to find a way to go have a little better season than we had last year.
Now you sound like Lou Holtz. I know this gimmick. Jimmy used to always go because Lou Holtz, I don't know how we're going to beat Miami. I have no idea how we're going to beat them. Those guys are the best. I'm like, Coach, you're 12-0. Undersell, over deliver, right, Coach?
Yeah, that's right. We don't have much room to talk around here right now. Coming off our year last year, we just gotta put our heads down, go to work, and see if we can go and fight our way back toward the top.
Coach, what did you learn from last year's season?
It's still the little things. I mean, it's still football stuff. You got to do the little things well to win football games. We lost 3 games by a total of 11 points, and we lost 2 of those games on the last play of the game, literally. And we had a couple games that we had the lead in the fourth quarter, and we didn't finish. First of all, you can't beat yourself. You got to have 11 people that are on the same page, that understand the call. We had too many times we didn't have that last year, especially on the back end defensively. We were really, really poor, and just being on the same page in the secondary, and gave up a lot of big plays, a lot of busts. That was really frustrating. And then offensively, you got to be able to run the football. You got to have a presence up front and being able to run the ball, and you got to be committed to that. And it's really more just confirmation of things that I know as a football coach, the things that win games. And we just didn't do those little things well, and the opponents did. And everybody's got good players, everybody's got good coaches. And the one thing about Clemson, we're going to get everybody's A game. You can count on that. And so you gotta do the little things that win football games. And again, it's blocking, it's tackling, it's eye discipline, it's angles, it's great communication, it's special teams. We gave up a kick return for a touchdown in one of those games that we lost on the last play. So all those things matter. And but that team was a committed group. I love those guys. I mean, bottom line is I didn't get it done. It was just a season that we came up short from what we expect around here, and thankful that that one's over and in the rearview mirror, and it's all about what's ahead of us now. We got a new opportunity.
The ACC, do you believe it's in a good place, Coach?
Absolutely. Tough league. We just had a national championship semifinal team last year. They didn't even get to the ACC championship game. So
right.
It's I don't really know if there's anything else to be said. It's a competitive league. And I think anybody can beat anybody in our league. And we've been to the playoffs 7 times. We went to 6 Final Fours, and there's been 2 years of the Final 12, and we made it the first year. Didn't make it last year, but Miami did. And so we've had a couple teams that have made the playoffs, and then obviously Miami going all the way to the national championship last year. That's really all you need to say. So I think our league is in a great shape. There's a lot of really, really good players. There's a lot of great players that get drafted out of this league. But it's a year-to-year, team-to-team type of deal. I mean, with the portal and all the things that you deal with now, the coaches moving around, players moving around, things can change quickly. And you might think this team's not good, and all of a sudden they're great, or this team's been great, and now all of a sudden they have a bad year or whatever. So I think there's a lot of great coaches in this league, a bunch of them, and a bunch of great players. And I have a lot of respect for, all these teams.
Coach, I got to ask you the question here about Brennan Sorsby, and I'm not going to ask you to comment on him, explicitly, but I'm going to ask you about, do you think that this is going to become a problem with more cases maybe that we may see down the line here with nil? I mean, there's, as you mentioned earlier, there's no guardrails. I mean, it's the wild, wild west in many ways when kids are getting paid right now. I mean, is this just something that you're concerned about also in the game, this Brandon Sorsby story? Because I think we're going to see more of these cases, Coach.
You're probably right. I mean, I think, again, you got young people and all of a sudden there's money and there's really not been much fear of consequences because there really hasn't been any order for a while now. Again, we're just kind of drifting around. But, it wouldn't surprise me if we see a little bit more of that, and then there's, at one point they came out literally, I don't know, maybe a year ago and said, hey, they're going to let everybody start gambling. And then they went, oh, that's probably not a good idea. Like a month later, and said we shouldn't do that. I don't even know if it was a month, maybe 2 weeks later. So there's just been a lot of, and I remember when we first went, like, what are we doing here? But that's just kind of, nothing surprises me anymore. But I would be shocked if there's not, other issues somewhere down the line, especially until there starts to be some, consequences and some order, put in place.
Coach, last question here for you. The college football playoff. Are you a fan of the process right now?
I mean, not really. Again, I've had a long talk about this at our conference meetings, and I really don't waste much power or brain energy on just these stuff that I have no control over, because it really just doesn't matter. The only thing that I try to focus on is my team, what I got to do to get them ready. Whatever I'm at a point, whatever they want, hey, my job's to get the Tigers there. And when it was a BCS, hey, we got there. We got to the Orange Bowl and played Ohio State, and that was an awesome experience in 2013 to be one of the, be in the BCS, one of those BCS games. And when it went to the Final Four, we went to 6 of those and 4 national championships. And when it went to 12, 2 years we've been in one of 50% of those so far. So, whatever they go to, whether it's 12, 24, 26, I'm at a point now where I really don't care. I'm just going to focus on the Tigers.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate you. Final thoughts next. One of the most polarizing stories that continues to hit the media trail has to be this WNBA story now. And, the story with Dan Patrick this past week, I thought Dan really did a great job at explaining his position of her not coming on and doing an interview. Now, listen, all of us who do these shows, look, we know people are busy and we know people are going to cancel on us. We deal with it all the time. And there's no problem when you give somebody a heads up and you say, listen, can't make it, got to do this. Or listen, at this time right now, there is something going on where we would not like to comment on this. We'll give you a statement, but we're really not going to answer questions until we can gather more information. Look, I've been in this thing a long time. Over 30 years I've been involved in broadcasting, so everyone knows it here. Then here's the storyline. Dan Patrick on WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert canceling her appearance on the show. If you want to be treated as a serious league, which he's right, this is what happens. These are tough questions. And Dan gave her the opportunity by saying, this is a fair outlet for you, a fair platform. I will treat you with respect. Look, there's a lot of people out there, obviously, that are looking for clicks and views. And I do believe that Dan Patrick is a show, and he's a guy who wants to give you fair and balanced. I believe that. Me, on the other hand, I'm a guy with an opinion, and I'm going to give you my opinion on her in that league. And Dan's going to try to get at least both sides to see whether or not she can answer where the WNBA is concerning it, most notably with Caitlin Clark. Me, in my position, I think she's a train wreck. I mean, if you truly want to be covered as a mainstream sport, tough questions are to be asked of you. There was a couple months ago when one of the sports writers asked a coach and a player about her relationship with another player in the league. And immediately the PR department said, we're not here to answer anything on personal relationships. Next question. Unfortunately, dude, that's the kind of questions that are going to be asked of you because you're going to get uncomfortable questions when you are being covered as a mainstream sport. Not every press conference is a great press conference in the NFL, Major League Baseball, or the NHL or NBA. You have to answer these questions. I don't know why the WNBA wants to be such a small-minded league. Dude, you're now playing in arenas. You're now in a position where you're making money for the first time in 28 years. They are leaderless. Kathy Engelbert should be fired. Instead, she's hitting sand shots 50 yards away from Dan Patrick, not answering questions about her league, who could really shed some great light and give her great publicity for her league and for the players that she thinks she's protecting. I don't know why she feels so compelled to sit there and protect the rest of the players and not one player who's galvanized their league. It's okay to have a face of the league. Every sport goes through that. Michael Jordan was the face of the NBA. For years, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were the face. How about the fact when Larry Bird had the face, hey, Larry, Isaiah Thomas said if you were just another black dude, you would just be another player in the NBA. You think that's uncomfortable? That was at a press conference. That was during the Eastern Conference Finals that was brought up, that statement. And Larry had to answer that. Larry said, I'm just a basketball player. I want to play basketball. Dude, tough questions like that are asked all the time when you're in a mainstream sport. About what we're trying to see here a little bit with Team USA and their output, what they did in the World Cup. And you're seeing collateral damage and constant questions being asked about leadership, both on the team and both as the coach. That's part of being covered as a sport, dude. So when you look at Kathy Engelbert, she's doing a disservice to the WNBA and most notably to the other players in the league. Look, make no mistake. You're now a league that people are talking about. Take advantage of that. Publicity is good for your sport that has been hidden in the closet, so to speak. You now have an opportunity to put your team and your league and your players front and center. I have no idea why the WNBA is so afraid to answer the simplest questions. It makes no sense. You want this, but you can't deliver that. They're leaderless. She's the worst commissioner in all of North American sports. Dude, it's time to make a move. Sad place they're in. We'll see you next week. See you on the flip side.